Building a live games backend is really hard. There's a lot of different issues that you have to work through. So first of all, the scale is very high. Top games face scale issues that rival some of the top sites on the internet. And moreover, the highest load that your game ever sees, a lot of times it's on launch day. So that's very difficult to prepare for. It's hard to test to the load because you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know how many people are going to play your game the first day. And what makes it worse is that's actually the most important day of all, because you need to have a good, successful launch to set your game on a path of success. There are two ways that PlayFab supports updating logic on the fly. One is custom game servers. Think of more traditional multiplayer Twitch type games like a first-person shooter. Those kind of games need game server logic that is running around the world because it's very latency sensitive. Players need to have low ping times, and your players are global, so your servers need to be global as well. The other way that we support updating server logic on the fly is with CloudScript. And CloudScript is a super quick and easy way to make game server logic changes server side and have those changes propagate to all of your players. Another challenge there, especially with updating game server logic, is that a lot of times a server-side change needs to be accompanied by a client change. And it's pretty much impossible to make sure that all of your players update their game clients simultaneously. So PlayFab supports a couple different ways to handle this. With custom game servers, we support running multiple versions of the server at the same time. So you can update a new build of your game server, and we'll make sure that it starts up and is running in all the different regions around the world that you've selected, but your existing players that are running on the old version, they won't be affected. So you'll have both versions running side by side, and then as your players update, they move from the old version to the new version of your game server. CloudScript supports a similar update mechanism where you can add CloudScript revisions, but you don't have to deactivate the existing ones if you don't want. And that's really useful when you're doing updates, because you'll have one version of your game client that players are already actively using that might have a dependency on the previous version of your CloudScript. So being able to leave that running and have them connect to that while also updating a new version and having updated clients connect to it is a very useful thing. So the scale that top games hit is really hard to deal with, and traditional server architectures don't deal with it very well. Another challenging part of scaling games is that the load isn't predictable, right? So, besides just launch day, where you oftentimes get the highest load you'll ever see, you have other events where you get unpredictable spikes. For example, there might be a sale on a holiday or something like that that brings in a really large volume of players that you don't typically see day to day. And oftentimes that happens at the most inconvenient times, right? Like a Christmas Day sale and that kind of stuff. The way PlayFab deals with this is all of our compute resources and all of our storage resources, they're all horizontally scalable, right? For example, if your game suddenly sees twice the players that it normally does, we add servers and we add storage throughput automatically, so you don't have to deal with that at all. So another issue of load is basically the other end of the spectrum, where a game's been out for a few years and the player base has shrunk and it's not doing nearly as much traffic as it used to, but now you've got the problem of running all these servers that you had to set up for launch day and for whatever other major events that you had influx of players come in, but it's way overkill for what level of traffic the game eventually ends up with after several years. And a lot of times what studios do is they just turn it off and shut the game off because it no longer makes financial sense to keep it running. And that obviously is kind of a bad experience for their players, and it doesn't earn them very much goodwill. With PlayFab, even a game that has a tiny small set of players, it still makes sense to keep it running because you're only paying per DAU. So, you're not having to fund a full set of servers just for this one game. It's running on a shared infrastructure, and that allows economies of scale that everyone benefits from. All of the features and all of the APIs in PlayFab, those are all coming from the needs of real live games. We all have years of experience building platforms for games, so we know the kinds of APIs that are going to be really useful for games and unique to gaming, rather than just making a list of things we think might be useful and putting them out there. So one of the things that is pretty important in games is the concept of trading, where players can trade inventory between each other, and this becomes sort of a meta game on top of the game, like collecting items and trading for rare items and that kind of thing. PlayFab supports that natively. We have a trading API where players can offer items that they want to trade and what items they want in return, and then the trades can execute atomically, and we make sure that everyone gets what they're supposed to. And perhaps more importantly, there's a history where players can see how they acquired an item and the history of who traded it to whom and that kind of thing. We talked about CloudScript and how it allows you to easily add server logic for your game, but without having to host your own servers. Now we're going to take a look at CloudScript in action. So now we're looking at Postman. This is an HTTP client that makes it easy to make requests to our API and see what the responses are. On the right side is the game manager. And what you see here is the CloudScript tab, and it's on the first revision. This is the revision that everybody gets by default, and it's basically a hello world script that shows you a couple things that you can do and has some comments that explains why you might want to do that. What we're going to do is jump forward to revision 3 here, which I've basically simplified to demonstrate one possible use of CloudScript. And after we see it in action, we're going to go and make a change, post it to the game manager, and see how easy it is to make quick changes to your game server logic without having to do a client update. Right, so this revision is quite simple. Basically, whenever a player completes a level, the client will make this post request to PlayFab, telling it basically to execute the completed level CloudScript action. What you see over here is pretty simple. It takes a couple of arguments that get passed in from the client, level and monsters killed, and then it updates the user data to keep track of the timestamp when this player completed the level, and then it calculates a score and uses our stat API to keep track of that score. So this would be something that you might do to enable leaderboards later on, like using our leaderboard APIs, you could get the list of top players that had the most monster kills on this level. So let's see how it works. So I posted a request, completed level action, level name is 1 and monster kills is 5. And this is the response we got back. Basically, what we see is that the completed level action executed, and we see a log statement that was set as part of the CloudScript action, just saying updated level 1 score for the player to 10. As you see, we posted in monsters killed as 5, so why is the level 10? Well, let's go back. I'm actually going to open up the code in an editor to make it easier to change. Right, so this is the same function. Score is monsters killed times 2. Let's say we want to change that. Typically, that would involve updating a client, right? Let's say if I didn't have a server backend like PlayFab, I would have to do a client update, go through recert, just to do a balance change like this. With CloudScript, all I got to do is go in here and say, I want it to be monsters killed times 3. Save that. And then I go back over to the game manager, create a new revision, upload this file that I just edited, and you see there's now a revision 4. Like I talked about earlier, you can actually have more than one revision active. So let's say all your players currently out there are calling revision 3, and you might indicate in one of your title settings what the current revision is that you want clients to connect to. I can add revision 4 and actually call that from a test client, let's say, and make sure that everything works before I set it live for the rest of my players. Assume I've done this and I'm ready to go, and I want to deploy revision 4. Just hit this, deploy, and it's out there. So how do we know it's working? Well, let's go back to Postman and let's rerun that request. And now I see updated level 1 score for player to 15. So instead of monsters killed times 2, it's now monsters killed times 3. And that's basically it. It's as easy as that. So as we've seen with CloudScript, with PlayFab, you can focus on the details of your game and what makes it fun. And we take care of the challenges of scalability and availability.